when my dad was my age, I was being born. And also he didn't know he was halfway through his life.
That's a weird thought.
Yeah. When I was 8, my dad abandoned me in a Waffle House. I have a bit about it, so maybe that's what you saw. Huh? I know, sad. I'm honestly more of a pancake person. There you go.
For that, we're not going to talk about internet and trolls. So outside of internet and trolls, Jessica, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me outside of the internet and trolls.
Yeah,
I can't wait for this to be on the internet.
And get trolled.
Yay! Yeah, no, I'm excited to be here. It's taken long enough. We've been trying to make this happen for literally years.
Yeah, and I appreciate you making the time, considering it probably took you just the same amount of time to drive here.
Yes, we actually booked this 3 years ago, and I've been driving here the whole time from the other side of LA.
Yeah, thank you to Los Angeles transportation systems.
Yeah, thanks for everyone coming back to LA.
So before we started, I asked you a few more questions to catch up on what I thought we'd talk about, and obviously it's going to be about death.
Surprise.
Initially found you on Instagram, and you made, I don't remember what the post was. Obviously, for those of you that don't know her, she's a comedian, and she made some post about your father, which all I know is it was funny. It was so long ago, I don't remember, and that's what drew me in. And then when she got here, she mentioned you've experienced a lot of death in Alaska as well. That's a whole nother topic that we may tap into.
Yeah.
Needless to say, it seems like you've been involved in death in your life in a few capacities. Yeah,
there's been a lot of death, I think, in my life, probably starting from early high school is when friends started, I don't want to say dropping like flies, but dying. A lot of friends' parents. There was a lot of suicide in Alaska too. Yeah, and then I lost my dad. That was an interesting loss because it's I lost friends that it deeply impacted me, good friends, but nothing really compared to. None of that prepared me for losing my father, which I was really surprised by because me and my father weren't close. We did not have a relationship for years. So I sort of maybe thought I don't think I thought I would be as affected as I was.
So when you say you didn't have a relationship, there was no contact or just wasn't?
No, not really. I mean, we had previously. When I was 8, my dad abandoned me in a Waffle House. I have a bit about it, so maybe that's what you saw. Huh? I know, sad. I'm honestly more of a pancake person. There you go. And it's a whole thing. There's so much to make fun of with Waffle House and being left at one. And my parents ended up getting divorced. And then we, at the time, lived in southern Mississippi, and my mom drove us to Alaska. My dad went where all dads go, Florida. And so there was still contact. Before we moved, it was 1 weekend a month he'd come, and we'd stay at some shitty hotel, and I'd be like, there's a pool. Are we rich? La Quinta. What a small, when you're poor, what a low bar for what's fancy. I was like, oh my God, the Olive Garden?
Those breadsticks though, okay.
I know. All I can eat? I will. Then once we moved to Alaska, it was in the summertime, I'd fly to see him for a couple weeks sometimes. I think maybe I went twice. Then I ended up going to college in Florida. And I would drive over to his house. He was 2 hours away from where I went to school, and have dinner every once a month. I wanted to be closer to my dad. And then my senior year of college, he just moved to Texas and didn't have the same phone number. And that was kind of it.
What was the dynamic like when you did meet? Did it feel obligatory, or was it flowing? What was the conversation?
What's weird is that it kind of felt flowing. I had to do a lot of acceptance work I had to do way later in life. Things dawned on me that it was maybe he didn't really want to be an active father, or it took I had a lot of blame targeted at my mom because I'm which, let's be honest, when parents get divorced, it's everyone except the kid's fault. It's always the mom. There was just because I was, before my, I guess, family dynamic completely fell apart and went to shit, I was a daddy's girl. So that was the weirdest part for me, is that I was my dad's my best friend. I go to my dad for things. I think everyone, maybe this is not real, but in my mind, everyone has a favorite parent. I don't want to say favorite parent, but as a kid, a parent that you're well, I can go to them and they're not going to be as harsh, or
Yeah, you only got 2 choices unless you're Mormon.
Yeah, but also not everyone has a mom with borderline personality disorder, so maybe that's not true.
So does that mean you have multiple moms?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you never know which mom you're going to get, truly.
But for real, that's your mom.
Yeah. So it was my dad was the safer bet, that I was okay. He's consistent. I know what I'll get from my dad. With my mom, it's a real roll of the dice. So I think that, I always wanted to nurture that relationship. And I don't think he was against it. I just think until he died, I was sort of like, went through a fuck him after he like disappeared. But then, yeah, it was just a weird, he did drugs. And I think he was moving around, probably somehow had something to do with that, because he, at the time, was paying for my insurance when I was in college, my car insurance. And I got a call a few months later, like after I hadn't heard from him, from an insurance company. And they're like, hey, your insurance hasn't been paid. And I was like, oh, oops, which was my plan all along, to just be like, I'll just ride this out. And I was like, well, I can take it over. But then they asked me about some car that they're like, and do you know what happened like with the BMW? And I was like, the BMW? Like they had like a CRV, Honda. So I was like, I don't know what the fuck they were getting mixed up in. I just know that like one of the last times I hung out with my dad was at my stepbrother's wedding in Arkansas, getting married in the back of the traileriest trailer you've ever seen. And my dad was 100% on meth. And I was like, oh. He's like, well, it's a celebration. And I'm like, we sure celebrate differently.
A little bit.
So yeah, there was just this like gap of, God, I guess like close to like over a decade of nothing. I had one phone call with him in like 2012. And it wasn't even with him. It was my older brother, also a drug addict. That happens sometimes. I guess had moved from Alaska to live with my dad. Like he had reconnected with him. He also hadn't talked to him in a few years. What we were told is to get out of Alaska because he needed to clean up. Like he was trying to like get clean and couldn't do it because he was surrounded by, there's a big drug problem in Alaska and all his friends were in it, et cetera. And my older brother's best friend was murdered because of a drug deal situation. And my older brother like wasn't on Facebook at the time. I didn't know how to get a hold of him, but I was like, well, someone has to tell him. My mom just gave me a phone number. She's like, well, try this phone number. And I was like, oh, is that his phone number? She's like, you should be able to reach him there.
Okay.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm saying it out loud. I'm like, what an insane way to deliver that phone number. I call it and my dad answers.
Okay. And
I'm like shocked because I haven't, at that point, this was 2012. So it maybe been like 3 years since I last saw my dad or talked to him. And in a panic, I just was like, hi, can I speak to Thomas, please? Because I didn't know what to do. And this hurt. He goes, hey, Tom, there's some lady on the phone for you. And then I heard my brother go, there's a lady on your phone for me. Is it my sister, your daughter? And my dad goes, I think I would recognize the voice of my own daughter. And I was like, okay.
Oh.
And then I told my brother, and that's the last time I talked to my dad.
The last time.
That's the last time I was just like, oh, okay. But then he started following my Facebook fan page, or tried to.
And what year is this about?
In like 2018.
And he passed 2020.
2020, yeah. And so when I saw that he followed my Facebook fan page, I blocked him from following it.
Okay.
Because I was like, at this point, I was so angry at like my dad just disappearing. I had like probably in 2013, 2014 started talking about it on stage, started making jokes about it. And like, I think that was cathartic for me, but I also think there's a lot to like when you're repeating a story, even if you're like doing jokes about it, they say that when you retell something, your body like re-experiences it as if it's happening. Like that's a big, I don't know, there's like some sort of psychological tie to it. The more I talked about it, the more I would think about it, the more I just sort of went down this path of like, dude, fuck you. That's where my brain went. It was just like, fuck this guy who does that. What a piece of shit. And then, of course, when he starts following my fan page, I was like, you don't get to just like quietly watch my life that I've built without you. You know, just this pride bullshit. And then I think earlier in 2020, he sent me a friend request on my actual Facebook page.
What is going on?
Yeah. And then like I talked to my therapist about it. And she's like, well, what are you going to do? And I was like, I think I'm going to ignore it. Like he didn't send a message. He didn't say anything. It's weird.
That's very bizarre.
Like, I don't want to just accept your friend request and see your conspiracy memes. And like,
is that what he's posting?
Oh, yeah. To anyone posting crazy things on Facebook, you should know that when you die, that's what people see.
That's
Like, I wouldn't want people to see my room messy when if I died suddenly and I haven't cleaned it, and then people are just like, the masks, they're trying to make us all be Muslims or whatever. And you're like, what are you fucking doing?
Yeah, that's just not going away.
No. And like, I now realize, because so that was probably early summer of 2020. And I was like, dude, fuck you. But I also didn't decline it. I just didn't accept it.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt weird about it. Come to find out in November or end of October when I got a phone call from like a cousin who I still stayed in contact. It was like the one person on my dad's family that I still stayed in contact with, kind of. She had come to a show one time in North Carolina, and she just was like this older cousin when I was a kid who, when we'd visit her family, she'd take us, like, they lived in Orlando, so she was in her 20s, and she'd take me and my brother to like theme parks and was just the cool cousin. Yeah. And I got a call from her, and she's like, hey. I mean, as soon as I saw she was calling, I was like, uh-oh, this cannot be good. We don't talk on the phone. And she's like, hey, your dad is in the hospital, and he went in because he went in for sort of like a checkup because he was having trouble like breathing, and they had to like intubate him.
Wow. Yeah.
I guess like what happened was he had a blood clot possibly in his leg, and then it like split and then went into his lungs. So he had blood clots in his lungs. And my dad already had COPD, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which is like a smoker's. It's like it's like the thing before emphysema. It's progressive. It's a death sentence. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that he'd had that. I didn't know how bad it was. But I guess like it was, he could barely like walk across a room. And my dad was also a very large man. He was like, he'd always been a big guy. Like, he retired from the military when I was pretty young, and he had a back injury. And I think that just like that, he just like put on weight and like couldn't shake it off or whatever.
That's not going to help anything.
No. And so like, obesity, smoking, blood clot. It's just
Facebook request.
Yeah. Ignored. Yeah, I regret it. But I'm coping by pretending that I can make a bit about it. So she's like, I just, want to let you know, because her dad, my Uncle Jim, she's like, he kind of went through the same thing earlier this year and passed away. And so, do whatever you want to do. I know that you don't really have much of a relationship with him anymore, but I can give you your stepmom's phone number and the hospital information if you, want to go there. And he was in Florida at the time, but you could go in the hospital in Florida in November of 2020 because it was Florida. So I just booked a flight. I was like, okay.
Oh, wow, okay. How did that make you feel with that decision process of, do I want to see him or not?
Well, that's what you do, right? Like, I think I was kind of like, oh no, I'm not going to cry, am I? Already? Ugh.
It's okay. It's okay.
Well, I think it's one of those things where like, I can only speak for myself, but like having such a weird past relationship with I think anyone who has had an estranged parent, you go like, what's worse? Like them trying to come back when you're like, they finally show up back in your life when you're like starting to succeed, or them never coming back. And I think having, at some point had a good relationship with him, which I had buried. Like I forgot how much I like loved my dad because I was so angry. I think, there's always that like deep subconscious hope that like maybe one day we'll like make amends and it'll be better.
I mean, that's the thing. You had that. You know what I mean? It's like you said, you compare the father wasn't there, came back, all that stuff. But it is interesting to hear the full story and dynamic that you had that love for him and you felt like, you were his biggest fan, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And then for it to be, you had like a taste of it.
Yeah.
You know what
that
I mean?
I go, and I firmly believe any child is better with a 2-parent household. But, and it's apples to oranges on never having the parent versus having it. But like, so it's easy for me to say, I almost wish I never had it. Because then there isn't like the pain to miss something, but I'm sure I'm sure everyone's missing. Like, it fucks you up either way.
For sure.
I booked a flight for like the very next flight available to Florida. And I flew into Tampa because I have aunts on my mom's side that live there. And they're like, you can just take our car and drive and whatever. I drove to the hospital. And of course, now I have a bit about it, and this is not true, but I'll be like, I walked in carrying a plate of waffles, and I was like, well.
I wonder if it would have been more of a punch if you actually brought the pancakes.
I know. I'm not kidding. I did like meet up with my stepmom at some point. She's like, if you want to grab food or something and just talk, she's like, I know it's awkward, but we obviously like have always loved you, and I know things got weird, but I'm here to support you through this, and we, it's a tough time for everyone. And we met at an IHOP next to the
is that better?
hospital.
Is that ironic?
That I'm like, yeah, I think it is. I mean, it's just a coincidence in terms of anything, but I was like, it never ends.
I need a sponsorship for this episode. I just don't know if it's going to be IHOP or Waffle House.
I know, right? It's like, can we just go to Denny's?
I want a Grand Slam, Mom.
Yeah, please. And I get to the hospital, and I'm like checking in, because they did have like, only 2 people could go in and see someone per day. It was like they had a list, and there was a check-in, to just minimize people coming in and out, because there was a separate floor for COVID, and he didn't have COVID, but they're, doing the Florida level of precautions.
You're in the heat of it too, November 2020.
That's, peak. I can't believe he didn't also have COVID.
Right.
Being who I know he was, and living in Florida where everyone else was also not wearing masks and all those things. The nurse was like, so he's intubated, and anyone who's intubated is on sedatives. You can't talk with a ventilator in. It's because it's the whole thing down your throat. Yeah. They're like, in theory, like if someone's awake, they can respond with like nods and yes and no questions. But he's not awake. He hasn't been awake in days. He's probably not going to wake up. But research shows that people in those states can still hear what's going on in a room. So she's like, so if you want to talk to him, that's okay. And I was like, well, I pull out a speech. No, but I was like, oh, I'm like, oh, this is going to be awkward as fuck.
Yeah.
I'm like, great, I'm walking in to see this man I haven't seen in God knows how long.
Before going in there, did you have intention of having an opportunity to speak to him? Or
I don't think I knew. I think I realized in that moment that I was like, oh, I guess there was a part of me that was hoping this would be the time we could like squash it.
Yeah, so where's your head? Because when I first asked you the decision of do you want to go, like, are you just going through the motions thinking this is what you had to do? Or are you going there with some kind of idea of closure or sadness or frustration?
I mean, I think I hate to say that my initial reaction was just like, well, that's what you do.
Right.
And then I was like, and then I'm gonna, if he dies and I don't go, I thought I'd be funnier.
So the thought of regret? Yeah,
I was like, I'm gonna wonder, like, what if we could have had one moment where there was just closure, or
I love that you went. I personally, this is my thought.
But I was like, I also had the moment of like, why did I wait till now to like try to be the bigger person? Why didn't I just accept a stupid friend request and be like, how you been?
Yeah.
Hey, you, dad? ? Like, so it was just sort of like, oh, like you just always think you're gonna have more time, Yeah. And which is weird to think that with someone you also never talk to, but
yeah, but these just make sense. These thoughts you're having, right?
Yeah, and it's just like I think it's like a weird dichotomy of like part of my brain has like decided he's just never around and almost doesn't exist, and then the other part is like, but there's like still there's always going to be an opportunity to figure it out, Love one of those weird old dad moments where like, hey, you fucked up, I'm sorry, or whatever, I don't know. But I was like, I guess I'm just gonna go talk to intubated man I haven't spoken to in over a decade. Here we go. Woo, And I walk in the room, and the first thing like I notice, the first thing I notice is his nutsack, because the fucking
like literally.
Yeah, he's in a hospital gown. He's a big guy. Can we just, why are we still calling them hospital gowns? It's a napkin. And we don't have like an extra large. We couldn't have put a little blankie over this.
For some reason, like the specific call out of nutsack is getting me right now.
Yeah, well, it's just like, woo. And he's like such a big guy that it's almost like, at the right angle, you wouldn't even be able to see his head behind his like big belly or whatever. And I'm like, we don't have hospital pants. We could slide up.
I'm curious. What's your reaction? Do you just take a path that you don't see it, or do you cover it?
I mean, once I realized that, when I'm just like turn and go, it was just sort of like, wow, that's right at the entrance. That's and it's hooked up to some machine because his kidneys are all fucked up because it's all connected and whatever. And he had gray hair and he didn't, I don't want to cry because I put on way too much makeup and I already spilled water on the drive over on half my face. So it just dripped off.
You can take a second if you need.
I mean, whatever. I cry all the time. Who am I kidding?
I don't know who you're kidding here. Comedian, yeah.
I know who I'm not kidding because he's dead.
Well, excuse me. Okay. I'm not ready for that one. Okay. I mean, the dynamic of everything you just said, like that really hit me when you said he had gray hair.
Because he didn't have gray hair.
Yeah, that's a very powerful observation. That's very meaningful.
Yeah, that was like, oh shit. Like, he is an old man. A very large old man. So large. I was like, God bless these nurses who have to fucking turn him every whatever so he doesn't get bed sores. Literally, they had like a team of people. They're fucking
angels.
I mean, truly, just heavy weight angels, just power lifters.
So do you speak to him?
Well, this is what's crazy. There's a nurse just checking all the bags and like moving stuff around by the like front of the bed, and I looked at him and I went, "Hey, Dad." And he woke up.
Conscious.
Like he woke up.
Wow.
And he like looked over at me. And he's like, no, I'm just kidding. No, but he did. He woke up and the nurse was like, oh, you're awake. Good morning. You know, just being very nurse-like. And she's like, well, he must be excited to see you. Because obviously she's been running in and out. The man's just in a coma, fucking, you know. And he just like looked at me and then I was like, and he kind of like had teary eyes, but also it's like you have a thing and I don't know how much is like, you know. And I was like, do you know who I am? And he like nodded his head and I was like, okay. And then I like walked up to him and the nurse was just like, oh, this is great. Oh, it's so good that you're here. And I was like, okay.
And she has no idea the dynamic.
No idea.
Yeah.
I'm just his daughter. Like, you know, she doesn't know, you know, as far as she knows, it's just, of course his daughter would be here. And I like walk on the side of the bed and he like, because she was kind of on one side, so I went to like stand on the other and he like followed me with his eyes. Sort of felt like he's like started to choke on the machine, which was really kind of uncomfortable to watch. And she's like, the nurse is like, hey, John, you know, you're on a ventilator right now because you're having some trouble with your lungs, so you're not able to talk. So they had to kind of like, because you're so like dazed, I guess they have to keep like reminding you that like what's going on and like that'll happen if he's like trying to talk. And so I just kind of like held his hand and I was like, hey, it's okay. Like I just was like, everything's okay. And then I said, I'm sorry. And I was like, God damn it. But like, I am, but I was just like, and he just like nodded his head and like, and I was like, can I give you a hug? And he like nodded his head and I gave him a hug and like, I don't know, I like came back up and I just sort of like was having this very awkward, like one-way conversation sort of just being like, I was just sort of like dumping my forgiveness on him. Honestly, I was just like, hey, sorry, you know, like everything's okay. Like I know that like things have been weird, but like I'm here and I love you. Everything's okay. Like,
does that frustrate you in many ways that you had to be the one to say sorry?
No, it was just like, I can't remember the exact back and forth, but like I got the sense from whatever we were saying that like he was also trying to be like, I'm sorry, you know?
Like that's, I mean, you were there and it's your story, but the way you told it, I felt as if if his nod was him saying sorry.
Yeah.
Is that what you felt?
Yeah. And like he was really teary-eyed and god damn, like if you would told me to like describe what my grandparents looked like his parents before this, I would have been like, they were old people. My grandpa was kind of thin. My grandma was like a little heavy-set woman with a fake bun of hair and the sweetest person on earth. And my grandpa would just sometimes disown people and go quiet. He was a war veteran. I don't know what to tell you. That's what he's just like, you're out of my life, and then just disappear. But like, which, you know, when you think about the fact that that's his father, but like, I just like, he looked so much like my grandparents in that moment. Like I was like, those are my grandpa's eyes.
Yeah,
like
that's strange.
yeah, it was just crazy. He sort of like stayed awake for a while, like nodding with me and like talking, and like he would nod off a little and like fall asleep, and I hung out all day. Like I just sat there and and when he'd wake up, I'd like get up and how you doing? Just so I started repeating like the nurse thing of like, you're in the hospital, but everything's okay, which must have been like a mind fuck for him for like,
What about you?
yeah. I mean, I was just like, damn, my dad is dying.
Okay, so that's a point that I want to kind of like tap into. So what was that process when you're sitting there? What are you working through your brain right now? Do you feel sad? Are you grieving? Are you
I
crying?
felt sad, and then I was also like, yeah, I think I like headed out to this trip like, well, I guess my dad's gonna die. And then I was like, we had that moment, and I was like, oh, maybe he won't die. Like maybe he'll recover.
You just don't know.
Yeah. And the nurse, they kind of came in and they're like, okay, well, his lungs are like this, and like it's causing his kidney to fail. So in order to like, they basically, I mean, like I could go on a rant about how it's like, wow, what a medical team. But like when the doctors and the nurses are like, it's kind of up to him. And I'm like, what?
Wait, what's up to him to
Like he's got to like, his body just has to get better. So it's like they basically were like, he's got to want to live. And I'm like, that's your medical, that's what you can do medically, is tell me that he's got to want it. And also it was at like a St. Joseph's hospital. And I am now remembering that I wanted to do a bit about like, but I never did, just about how like, yeah, I don't want my loved ones in a hospital where the main form of care is prayer. Like, it's like, that's good. Pray. I don't
Nothing wrong with that.
Believe in that. But it's like, I want science. I don't want God's love plugged into my arm. I want the fucking whatever juice I need to come back. He like woke up and I was like, your lungs aren't doing good, and your kidney is not doing great. But as I was there, like his oxygen numbers started going back up, and they're like, they're like, this is good. He's like getting better. Like his oxygen they're like, this is the best it's been in days.
Was he conscious before you walked? Like, I know when he became conscious when you were there, did he have moments of consciousness prior to that?
They said that he had been pretty much fully unconscious for like the past 2 days. And and because his stuff is just like slowly declining, they kind of were like, he's probably not coming back.
And then you came there and it got boosted up.
Yeah.
So does that give you any kind of...
I'm God? Yeah. I'm kidding.
I'm just saying back to, okay, so when they were saying, like, I understand the thought of like how would a medical community say he has to want it.
Yeah, but then I mean, you hear those stories of people like coming back from things that like, stage 4 this, or like, we definitely, like, the doctors didn't think I'd make a recovery. I was medically dead on the table. And like, I wouldn't have thought that like me not being in anyone's life, which could have an impact like that. But, they say things like that and you go like, oh, maybe this is a weight lifted off his heart. And
I mean, I would, unless he's a zombie, I would have a hard time thinking even like if back to their studies saying he was acknowledging what you were saying.
Yeah.
He had to have had some kind of weight on his shoulders probably for his whole life, let alone in his deathbed.
Yeah. I also can now, like, I had way more empathy and understanding for like his position as a human, even though, I maintain he made fucked up choices. It's not, it's easy to say that was fucked up, but also people make choices that they think are the right choice at the right time. That like, and I understand being like, actually, maybe I'm such a fuck up. It's better for me to not be in someone's life. That someone just happened to be his kids, which I don't think is ever the right move. But like, I also like found empathy in that, like, wow, he must have really not felt good about himself to really feel the best choice was to be like, let me just get out of this. Let me just like, it's better if I'm just gone, which just all dumped on me after he like fully like passed away.
What, these contemplations?
Yeah. Well, just these like realizations and all this like empathy.
How much of that is the thought? Cause I mean, that's a fucking shitty situation to think that your father doesn't want to be in your life. Or maybe not, whatever his reason was, doesn't want your can't, I don't know. But like, that's gotta feel shitty on you thinking, why doesn't he love? Like, there's the love question. Like, what am I not this or that?
Yeah, I mean, even though like I can, I do therapy. I do self work, and I can I can logically accept that like I'm not unlovable because one man made bad choices. It seeps into your existence. And it like took me a long time to realize behaviors I had in relationships were like, I have severe abandonment issues. And it's like, oh, actually I do have like terrible self-worth. I've worked on it exponentially, but like there's moments where it still like flares up of like irrational, like I'll have irrational fears like in relationships. And it's because because of him. It's very hard to make someone who hasn't experienced like that understand too. Like I've had trouble with partners where it's like, it's not their responsibility. I know it's like my triggers. I understand that it's like, this is my thing and I have to work through it, but I also have to communicate that it happens. And people will take it very personally that like, I will have a reaction of like, well, you like my like deep brain is like, they're going to leave you. Everyone leaves you. And you know, that can be like hurtful to someone who loves you. It's very hard to explain that to someone who has a good relationship with their dad. That you're like, do you know the guy that like you still just call to like when you have a bad day because he will love you no matter what? That guy left me in a restaurant. Like the guy that's the one person that's supposed to always be there wasn't there. So why should I believe this person I've just met? And it's ongoing and you never really get rid of it. You just like learn to notice it and hopefully calm yourself down before you actually like spiral and let it like cause you to make bad decisions.
So is that what you do?
Yeah. I'll have like things that trigger my abandonment. And if I'm meditating regularly and like journaling and being my like healthiest self, which spoiler alert, I am not always doing that. I can like catch it and go, okay, I know I'm being triggered and just like in my brain be like, I'm having a false response out of fear because of something else that happened. But like if I'm not being healthy, it's like a minor criticism from my partner and I'm like fight or flight, fucking freeze, crazy. Like I have, okay. And then I'll have like a shame spiral and like, I have to get out of here and like sob and it looks crazy.
Yeah, but your awareness is next level. You know what I mean? That you're very direct and acknowledging everything you just said. That's got to be a big step comparative to where some people are, right?
They don't even know that that's what's happening. Oh yeah.
I wonder if how many people actually like know and just deny and just in denial about it. Is that a part of it?
I think so because I think that like we we all have egos. We don't want to see ourselves as damaged. It like our fucking ego will do backflips to be like, it was their fault. It's his fault. They did this.
Yeah.
Like it takes so much work to get past that for most people to be like, oh, actually, this is my thing. And it's not my fault I have it, but how I react, it is my responsibility. Like, I hate people talking about like trigger words and fucking Twitter bullshit about like you can't say that I'm triggered. And it's like, I'm sorry that you're triggered. That does suck. Took me a long time to acknowledge that was how I was like, fucking pussies walking around triggered all the time, being like, or if you deal with it. Because we all want to be like, people, I want to believe I'm strong. I want to believe I can handle anything. And like, it didn't affect me. I'm not going to let, that story, I'm not going to let it affect me. It's like, no, it did affect you.
Yeah.
And that's okay. You can like rise above it. But it's also you being triggered is nobody else's problem. You can let people know if they care about you, they can be like, let me try to avoid that. But like, that's your body telling you something about you. You need to learn how to deal with that.
Right. That always made the most sense to me if you're being triggered by something, that's still something that has to be massaged out.
Yeah, you need to examine what's going on.
If it's ever going to be massaged out, but worked on at the least, right?
Yeah. That it's like, yeah, that's your body's telling you something about you that you need to work on.
The triggers are almost like good. It's good. Shitty how you react, but triggers are like, that's a, hey, hello.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Well, I mean, it's funny you say massaged out because you think about like even getting a massage where someone will find like a knot in your body.
Yes.
And you're like, yeah, work on that. That's what a trigger is.
Protruding for a reason. It's telling you what it is.
That's an emotional knot in your body that needs to.
It's interesting when you get it is kind of just so counterproductive when you think about naturally me too. Sometimes I might get a trigger, but at this point in my life, I see a trigger and I think, okay, why is that triggering me? But usually we get a trigger, it's like avoid, don't do that. I'm just not even gonna think about it. I don't want to be around the trigger. Yeah. No one wants to be triggered.
No, well, nobody wants to feel heavy, hard emotions. It's hard, and that's why I think men are more angry publicly than they are sad. And that's why I think I was angry about my dad, because those are both what is socially considered negative emotions, being sad, being angry. But it's more socially acceptable, I think, to get angry, to be pissed off. Oh, you're the pissed off guy. Than it is to just like go, actually, that you like really hurt me, especially for men. Like a man going, hey, that really hurt my feelings. Gay. Yeah. Like that's like we were all fucking in the 90s, fucking bullied and toxic masculinity. And then, if there's no one for you to lean on, you feel like I have to be strong. I can't like admit to being hurt.
Especially men.
Yeah.
Societally in general, but men for sure.
For sure. And then as like an independent woman, there is that like thing that happens of, well, when you have abandonment issues, it affects your self-worth. It affects your belief in how people will love you. So then like if you see yourself as someone fundamentally unlovable, there's a story you're telling yourself that you're like, okay, so I'm probably going to be on my own. So like, I can't be sad. I can't be like a pussy. I'm on my own. I gotta be like, I don't care. It doesn't bother me. You know?
I mean, all the things that happened to you are not your fault. But
for sure.
But it's at some point.
It oozes out of you, the effects.
The effects do, but I feel like, and when I say you, the general you, not you, but I feel like at some point
not you, it is your fault.
Not you, but actually you, but no, it's you. But like the general idea that I think at some point we got to take responsibility of figuring the shit out.
Yeah, that it's like, it sucks when a bad thing happens to you like that. It's terrible. It's not your fault, but pretending it didn't happen is not the answer.
No.
You have to like deal with the bullshit that comes up. You have to fucking get out the emotional pus, so to speak.
So how did you get that emotional pus out? Is it therapy helped you?
I mean, I think therapy helped a little. I think
pus.
It's gross. Yeah, I don't like it. Yeah. I regret saying that.
I can't remember repeating it.
Tune into my podcast, Emotional Pus. Emotional Puss?
My new EP.
Is this about her sad vagina? Sad vagina. Tuesdays on CW. I think a little bit therapy helped. I honestly think my comedy, I didn't mean to become a comedian who was like a gaping wound. I just at some point I started talking about making jokes about things that happened to me. And like it helped me cope. Being able to take something, which is why I hate when people try to censor comedy or like, you can't joke about that. It's like, that's how that person copes with that. 100%. If you don't like a joke, that's okay. Don't listen to it. But like for some people, taking something that's completely fucked up and beyond your control, and there is nothing you could have done to stop it or make it better. But if you can just turn it silly.
Especially if you've experienced it.
Yeah. And that's it's like survival. That you're like, oh, I found a way to laugh at something that shouldn't be laughed at. Like a thing I used to do with like breakup, this is so insane, but I think somebody maybe told me to do this. But like with heartbreak, or if somebody like was really mean and hurt my feelings, I used to just imagine people that like hurt me in like really stupid hats or like bad wigs. Like it's for like making the thing absurd.
Yeah, I personally, that's why I love talking to comedians like yourself, is because that humor, and I'm not trying to push it on anyone, but at the end of the day, humor is such a magical coping mechanism. And I wonder if there's a balance of using humor to deflect it or use it to like cope, or maybe both. Because you mentioned that if you mentioned the psychological combination of like if you make a joke on stage and constantly say it, you're bringing up those emotions.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense. That psychosomatic connection for sure. I think your subconscious mind sometimes doesn't know the difference of what's happening, what's not, perhaps.
Yeah.
But is that a good thing or a bad thing, are you saying?
I think it's good to know. And then I will say I regularly do think about like bits that does very well that I haven't really put in a special or put out anywhere, that like because I started talking openly, the feedback I would get from like industry or other comics or even audience members, like, you should do more of that. Like, that's like really, I think that it will help people. And like, I think it's really unique. And so it's like, you hear feedback, and because I decided to make the art I love my life, I'm like, well, if that's what people like, I should probably do more of that. And I do think about like, should I stop doing this bit? But also there's something to be said about, because I've extended it now to include stuff about my dad's death, which is also hard. But there are actual therapy modalities, I think like internal family systems. That could be the wrong one. I'm not a therapist. Where a therapist will have you like reenact a situation, but this time you say the thing you wish you would have said, or like reframe it differently. So I think like making jokes like that, where like it sort of gives you like a different power and it helps your brain heal. Because there's something about therapists will do a thing where like, well, what would you say to them now if you could do this? And being able to like say that even if it's in a joke, or like being able to joke about it, I think lightens.
I get it. That makes sense. I mean, it's just sound too woo-woo, but when you're saying something, excuse me, Christ, it is like a release of energy. Like you're releasing something. Like I don't know what the hell it is.
Yeah, you'll get it out.
You're literally getting it out. And
yeah,
you're a real thing.
It's coming for trauma.
Coming?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. Not that I am on stage being like, oh yeah, that was a good one. But like sometimes.
It's a really good joke, yeah.
Yeah, I think it bums me out that people, because I mean, and there are some people who maybe just cannot find, something's too close for it to in any way to be funny.
Yeah,
but I also think there's people who have taken on who have chosen the personality of, I follow the rule that there are things that you should not joke about. I want to identify as someone who thinks you should not joke about these things. And if that's not true to you, I think that's a disservice.
I mean, I genuinely mean this. Like the day I died, if there's a funeral, if my body still could be found, I hope people are making jokes. I
want to be dangled from strings. I want people, I want it to be, I want like one last joke, you know, like I want to just like lift up from the coffin. But
I would love a roast, to be honest.
Yeah, it's like talk about remember me like laughing. Yeah, of course. Like
100%.
No, I want people on the floor.
Yeah, with me.
I can't go on. No, I mean, yeah, like whatever it takes for you to, it's catharsis. I think humor is healing. I think the act of laughing is a physical reaction. By and large, it's a physical reaction at being overjoyed at feeling understood. When you're laughing at something that's like fucked up or like that's too dark, that's too far. It's just like, oh, I've had that thought. Or like, oh, fuck, I can't believe you said that. Or just like, I felt that way, but I didn't want to.
Yeah. It's like, and to me, it's like sometimes just an interruption. It's just an interruption to the constant whatever the hell we're going through.
Yeah, to the gray cloud that you're living in.
Yeah, and it's just a quick little like lightning bolt, temporary, like, it's like, you know, quick sunny sky or something that interrupts the moment, and I think it just redirects my brain to something that makes me laugh.
Yeah.
Humor's subjective, obviously, but to me,
of course,
you know, I crack 9/11 jokes all the time, and they're not even jokes. It's honestly usually just weird statements that I find funny, but it doesn't always hit to the other person because they find a sense of it's a
it doesn't always land. Much like the planes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
There we go. Yeah, that's good. That's fucking beautiful.
Well, yeah, no, and you're like, because it was like, well, I can't undo it.
I know. And it's different.
So let me have my little corner of fucked upness.
Especially if it's you doing, like, I'm respectful enough to not make certain jokes around certain people. I like to think I have awareness enough to not do certain things.
Yeah.
But to me personally, humor has been a big part of my life and just dealing with anything, no matter, even in certain moments, like even if it's really fresh for me, it works, but not for everyone. I'm aware of that. But, you know, it's different for anyone. But
for sure. I mean, some of my best material has come from me talking about something terrible that just happened.
Same.
And probably way too soon.
Well, not material, but yeah.
But just like ability to laugh at things.
Yes.
Is this just like, I cannot believe you just said that about the thing that is, it shocks people too when it's your own thing, that they're like, how are you just joking about that?
I don't really have a too soon button. Like,
no.
Publicly I will. I won't say certain things because I get it, but it's hard I don't really have a too soon button. If anything, it's, I need it now.
Yeah,
it's not soon enough.
I need to stop this overwhelming thing.
And that's a particular taste, I think, for some people. But I feel like it's opening up a little bit more. I can't even say that. I don't even know what the hell that is.
I mean, I think so. I mean, I think there's always going to be people who don't want to hear jokes like that. And those people are bummers. They're huge bummers. It sucks to be around you. But hey, whatever you need. I'm kidding. I don't want you to be like, fucking, no. The backlash. No, but like, I also think with the inundation, I think we're going through a very big, society's going through a very quick fucking up and down of transforming and hopefully everything for the better. But I think with the inundation of information and how many terrible things there are in the world. There are also good things, but the news loves to tell you about the terrible things. So you're constantly hearing the horrible things. I think people are also like, no, I need this. Like, I need to laugh.
Oh, okay,
like, people are hitting a point where they're like, I can no longer emotionally and mentally afford to be the person who can't laugh at terrible things because my brain can't take this much.
It's like pushing the edge of insanity almost, where you just like start going manic about it.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm manic about it, but again, I think laughing in general, like outside of the whole,
it's a release.
It's laughing in general. Think about laughing not in a bad moment. Just laughing feels good.
It feels so good.
So why not want to feel good in those shitty moments
a bad moment
by laughing? Like laughing inherently is only good and makes you feel good. It's a release. You feel good. So why not apply that to any situation?
You want to just bathe in your sadness forever?
I know, laugh in a bath. I don't know, like just whatever the hell you need to do.
Yeah, it does. I mean, yeah, I agree. And I don't know how we got to this, but
yeah, I mean,
but I agree.
So how are you today? Like how does this all apply to your grief today? I'm curious. It's a hard transition because the whole dynamic that we just kind of discussed about your father and then seeing him and having that somewhat closure. Do you consider a closure?
I consider a closure. I also closing time for visiting hours, and I was alternating visiting him with my stepmom and my stepbrother because you can only have two at a time. And I was in the room when they unplugged him. I don't really talk to my stepmom much, but I let her know, oh man, that was a weird. She's like, they said I couldn't be in there. They said that people couldn't be in the room when they did that. And I was like, well, who got the last laugh now, bitch? I'm just kidding. No, but we were playing like a playlist of his favorite songs on the Spotify thing, and like
closing time.
Yeah. Freebird, the guitar solo, is the joke I make. I really thought Freebird was playing. This is crazy. Okay, so I'm like walking down with him. They move you to a different area where they unplug you. It's like just the hospice or whatever. He was fully not awake, but I was like still talking to him. Fuck.
It's okay.
Because I imagine if you're like hearing things going on and like, okay, I want to move him to here. I was like, everything's okay, Dad. Like, everything's going to be okay. It's like, what do you say to someone who's like, well, bye. hey, just in case you're not sure, this is the end. Like, hey, I hope hell's not real. Like,
so what do you say?
But and they explain, when we unplug someone, sometimes they stay alive and it's like a slow for up to like 48 hours. They're like, based on his numbers, he's probably going to have like one breath and go. And so I just was like, everybody loves you. And I mean, like, the fucked up reality is like, I don't know if his wife and the son that lives with her with his kids are going to be okay, but I didn't tell him that. I just was like, yeah, they'll be fine. I was like, everything's okay. Everyone's going to be okay. Everybody loves you. And like, I guess I was saying what I think I'd want to hear also, but also trying to like have a final closure. I just was like, you can go.
It's not like you're prepared for this.
Yeah. Which who does? Yeah. You just go like, you don't have to be worried about anything.
That's very nice.
Like, it's okay. It's good job. Not a great job, but you did okay. Could have been worse. And that, there's a song playing. As my brother also was there with me. He would like the first day when all that happened, I was just alone. But then, he got off work and would come with me. And I was like one breath. And then like, this is so woo woo, but like you feel an energy leave. Like I was like, I was like, I believe that there's something else. And it's like, I felt like something go past. And I was like, he was gone.
Really?
And then you're just like, well, how long do I sit here holding this man who's turning gray's hand? So this is crazy. I have a friend who like mediums when she gets drunk. She's a drunk medium? She's not like, she doesn't do it professionally. I also had a medium later on my podcast. And I told her the story about my dad. And she said something that I thought was a really nice, she's like, it's really nice that in that she wasn't channeling him. I was just interviewing her about being a medium, but I told her a story. And she's like, what's nice is that, you taught your dad about forgiveness in the last moments of his life, where he learned, because, she's like, seems like he maybe didn't know how to forgive himself. And like, you gave him that. And I was like, well, I'm going to put that in my pocket and carry it with me everywhere I go. But
no, it's beautiful. It's real.
Yeah. But the drunk, so this is just like woo-woo psychic shit for anyone who like thinks that stuff's cool. But
perfect.
A few months later, me and my brother, like I started writing a joke about my dad dying during the guitar solo of Freebird. And like my brother heard the joke and he's like, that's funny. He's like, but I'm pretty sure it was some other Leonard Skinner song, like Tuesday's Gone. And I was like, no, it was this. And he's like, I don't know. I feel like I remember this. And I'm like, we'll agree to disagree. Freebird's funnier. So it's going to be Freebird. The joke ends on him being a redneck. So Freebird it is. He probably wished it would have been Freebird. What redneck doesn't want to die to the guitar solo of Freebird? It's beautiful. But my friend she's a comedian. She went on the road with me for 3 weeks. And she's like, oh, when I get drunk, like, she's like, it's weird. Like spirits come in. Like I can like hear people talking.
Is she drinking hard alcohol?
Yeah. Well, or just whatever. She's like, I think I could probably do it if I really like tried, but I think it's just like all my boundaries are down.
I think that's why they call it spirits. There's something correlation there, by the way.
That's probably like true.
And I'm pretty sure, I don't know the exact story, but I'm pretty sure it's something they call it spirits. There's something there.
That's fucking wild. That makes so much sense. And she's like, depending on like this, she was trying to explain what it's like. She's like, on the side of my head that I'm like hearing things, I can tell if it's a man or a woman. And then like, if I hear it up here, which this makes no sense to me because I don't hear these things.
Same, yeah.
But she can tell like how old they were or whatever. And I watched her do this with another person we hung out with on tour. And she like said very specific things. And he's like, oh my God, that's my cousin.
Oh shit.
But then later she said these things that she had tried to say before. And I was like, I don't know who that is. She's like, something about an elbow. And I was like, I don't know anyone with an elbow. A man with an elbow. And then I remembered that my dad had fallen off of a truck when he was like when I was in college, because he wanted to become like a long haul truck driver, which just do meth. You don't need to make a profession out of it. But like, and he fucking broke his elbow. And I was like, oh shit, that happened to my dad. And she's like, and then I'm something about the back, like maybe the right back. And this is so funny. My friend Ryan O'Flanagan, also a comedian, was there. He's like, is it like, I'll be right back? And then he didn't come back. Is that what? But anyways, we determined that I think this is my dad. And she's like, oh my God, Ryan said, he's like, he's cracking up. Oh my God, he's like got such positive energy. He's so jolly. And he was like, until he left, he was just like this big, like funny guy. Like, I think he was like very Chris Farley, like just goofy and silly and a big kid. And I do think that was part of his being like, maybe it's better for me to leave, is that I do think he hit a point. I was like a hyper intelligent kind of weird kid and we always got along, but I think my dad was really great with little kids. And then I think maybe there was a part of him that was like, I don't really have anything else to teach him. So I guess I'll get out of here. But she was like, oh my God, he's so proud of you. And then she was like, and he also says, and I had never told anyone that conversation I had with my brother. She's like, and he also said, the song is wrong.
No shit.
And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, the song for like when he died, there was a song and you have it wrong. And I was like,
shit, I gotta change my joke
what
now.
the fuck?
Wait, she knew nothing about that, right?
No, we'd been on the road at 3 weeks at that point. She might have seen me do the joke, but I never told anyone about that conversation with my brother because I was like, that's the punchline, it sticks, I'm not changing it.
Right.
Sometimes you just tweak the facts.
Right, because the joke doesn't mention anything about you thinking about the song is wrong.
No.
Right. That's specific.
Yeah. And I was like,
shit.
Whoa. Well, I'm not changing it.
Yeah. Sorry, Dad.
Sorry.
No, that's, I mean, those are one of those stories, because I've had several of those on the podcast that it's like, you know, everyone asks, like, calls BS, this or that. But from talking to you, you didn't seem like anyone that has any hard religious ties or any agenda.
I mean, like, I grew up Catholic and then was like, well, this is obviously wrong. There's obviously a lot of rules we made up to finger kids, it seems like. But yeah, I have just the general, like, I did mushrooms and I was like, okay, well, so there's more than this. You know, like that's my religion or whatever.
Relatively the same, even though I was raised Catholic, but it's a whole other conversation. I've talked about it too many times on the podcast. You already know.
I'm ethnically Jewish, Catholic.
Ethnically pussed.
Yeah. My emotionally and ethnically pussed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I went on a rant. I'm sorry. I took 5 ants.
Ants?
It's ADHD meds. I'm prescribed.
They're called ants?
Vyvanse.
Okay.
I eat ants. This is when you find out I'm actually the craziest person. Yeah, no, it's
all a lie. Your dad's waiting to pick you up in an Uber.
Yeah.
So before we wrap it up, I do want to ask you, how are you feeling today, 3 years later, through all this?
I feel good. I think it's given me a lot of closure. I have moments where I'll like, and I don't know if you have this, with the moments of sadness that creep in where you're like, get a little too nostalgic or think about it too much. I did have like a dump of memories that gun to my head, couldn't have told you any of these memories before my dad died. And maybe like a few weeks later, like in a parking lot in Ralph's, I was like pulling in. And I'm like, I don't know what kind of trigger that is, what was on the radio or what. But like these childhood memories of like.
That you said you blocked out, right?
Yeah. Amazing memories. And I started sobbing. But it like affected. I didn't realize it. Up to that point, I was pretty hard line on like, I don't want kids. And I couldn't tell you why. I just was like, I just don't feel like that's for me. And then I was like, oh, it's because I had no memory of like a good parent-child relationship.
Damn, you really think about this. It's great.
Yeah. But then, of course, I was like, oh, a little late in the game. I mean, not that late, mid-30s, but I'm like, a little late in the game to be like, oh, actually, maybe I would want a kid. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm not going to repair. And I'm still like that. I'm like, oh, I'm actually open to it now. But I'm like, oh, it's so I could repair the wound. That's not why you should have a kid either. But I just was like, oh, I remembered like beautiful like parent-child bond looked like. For some reason, that was actually healing instead of, like the resentment just goes away.
Wouldn't that be
like healing? You just go like, oh, okay, this was just a guy whose best was not great, but like whose is. And
I mean, you're showing a lot of sympathy there.
Yeah.
Or empathy.
Empathy. I don't know. I think I hate the word empath because it feels like just like, so I'm an empath.
But you feel it as opposed to, because sympathetic empaths, right? Empathetic people feel like they feel it.
Yeah.
And sympathetic, you just be sympathized towards.
You're like, oh, that sounds terrible. And I'm so sorry.
Right.
But like, yeah, I've always had a thing, which not to me specifically, but like if you like get deep into it on the internet, argue, it's like, you're not an empath, that's trauma. You have a trauma response. So you have a heightened awareness of everything around you because you had to survive or whatever. Yeah. No, I've always been able to like feel people's emotions. And also it's like, man, like and this might just be women's intuition, but like, can a man like not lie to me in a relationship where it's like, I have no evidence of the thing that I am aware is going on, but I'm 100% aware that you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing, and I can't tell you why.
Wow.
But like your energy, like which that's just one small part of it where it's like, I almost wish I didn't have that. But like, yeah, I can feel.
Can you feel the energy of a good or bad joke?
Oh, I mean, everyone can.
No, of a new joke.
Oh, yeah. Where
you think it's gonna hit, you know it's gonna hit.
Yeah. I think that comes with time, though.
I don't know why that even came up. Sorry, that was completely irrelevant.
No, but I mean, I'm a comedian, so it's like
completely irrelevant.
Yeah, no, for sure. And now it's like sometimes there's things where I'm like, well, this isn't gonna hit, but I'm gonna do it anyways because I like it.
But so now this experience, that these memories that came to you with really no explanation, this is funny you're saying this is healing for you.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel good. I think his death, I think other deaths in my past probably played into this, but like that death has helped me have some sort of deeper appreciation for life, and like it helped me be more willing to like be open to connection because I think I'm a person who's always been able to like pour out love but really not let it in and just like cherish small moments where like I think I really struggled with that before of just like busy hustle grind and
distractions
it's like,
or no?
Yeah, a little. It's like I'm a workaholic and some of that is like just trying to not fucking let the demons in or whatever.
Idle times.
Yeah. But it's like I take more time with like friends and I take more time to just like notice the world around me and like appreciate like how people make me feel and try to, make people feel good.
And so this is all stuff that you've realized you want to say recently, or has this been a process even before?
I think it was on its way, but like a lot of that was like, I think it just sort of gave me the push from like theoretically like wanting to, you go, of course I want to stop and smell the roses or whatever, but who's time for roses? But now it's like, I also was 33 when my dad died and he was 66. And it hit me really hard that I'm like, when my dad was my age, I was being born. And also he didn't know he was halfway through his life.
That's a weird thought.
Yeah. That I was like, my dad had no idea when he was having me that this was the halfway point.
That's a weird thought.
Which you don't think about.
The only thing I thought about recently, my sisters are saying, because my sisters are like early 40s, and my dad died when he was 46. So they were thinking, damn, we're almost the same age as my dad. That's so young. But to think like 22, my dad just got married. 21, my dad got married. It's like, it's a interesting, it freaked me out for some. I don't know why they hit me.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I know.
No, say sorry.
I also said that to my boyfriend who his dad died at this same age. And I was like, man, and I didn't even think about it. I was like, man, you're like halfway. I said that and he's like, oh my God. And I was like, I'm sorry. It plagues me.
Is that why he's your ex?
No, this is the guy I'm dating now.
Oh, sorry.
But
sorry, dude. My bad.
And I was like, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to send you on an existential crisis. It's just something I think about all the time.
That's hilarious.
Because you just go, oh, fuck. I mean, probably my dad was pretty unhealthy.
Yeah.
So like barring any, unforeseen accidents, I'm probably, have multiple psychics told me that I'm going to live to an unbearably long, every psychic. Okay. I shouldn't even say every psychic. Like I've been to so many, but I've been to a few. And all of them are like, oh, you're going to live so long. And I'm like, no.
That's how I feel. Sometimes like, I don't know how long I really want to go, but
yeah. But then you go like, oh, fuck, if this is halfway,
that's not that much time. I mean, I don't know what the hell is time anyway.
Yeah.
It's like, this keeps going quicker and quicker. And that's the only thing I do notice.
Oh.
It seems pretty common. It's cliche, but it literally goes quicker and quicker, especially the more you got going on. The older you get, I don't know what the hell it is, but it's just...
it just like goes.
It's scary.
It's wild.
But I do have to commend you on, you're clearly a very smart woman, and the way you connect things and just look inward and try to find like, okay, I'm feeling this, but why? And then working backwards, this and that, it's not easy to do. I think it's easier to do if people just trust themselves and just understand. You feel something, you're feeling something, and then just start asking questions. Why do I feel something, and where's that coming from? And those steps to take are not easy to do, but it's a good process. I think that you've explained to people that are listening on how to understand what the hell they're feeling and why and where it comes from. Whether it's 30 years ago, whether it's from the loss 2 years ago, it just all kind of works together.
Oh wow, yeah, thanks. I never thought of it like that, but
what, like the way you're doing it?
Yeah, I guess.
Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the way I see it.
No, I think I guess there's something to like also trusting your instincts and your emotions.
Yeah, I could be completely wrong.
It's like our bodies are fucking wildly intelligent and are keeping us alive. And like, if it's telling you something, Trust that your body isn't just firing off for no reason.
Yeah, no, if you feel things at certain places, it's like, I think there's a lot more going on than we think, or maybe we don't think. I don't know.
Yeah.
But Jessica, thank you for being willing to chat with me a little bit. And I'm sorry for the non-tissues and for the Charmin, but I think it did the job.
It did. Look at those toilet paper bears.
Are there bears on there?
No.
Would have been cool if it was.
Isn't that the commercial? Whatever.
I don't know. I'm still working on my sponsorship, but is there anything, before we do get out of here, is there anything you want to, if there's anything else you want to say or mention, I'll put it as usual. You'll see everything in the notes if you want to, when you find Jessica and what she's got going on. If there's anything you want to plug last minute, feel free to drop it.
Yeah, just follow me all over the internet at JMS Comedy. I've got clips on Instagram, videos on YouTube. I have a podcast called Ignorance is Blessed. I'd love to have you on sometime, actually.
Yeah. I fly out tomorrow.
Let's talk about your death now.
Perfect. I'll write some 9/11 jokes for you.
It's a fun podcast about learning about other people, and another one called Slobs. And so
Slobs.
And that one's just a comedy. It's just me and.
I'm not really kidding about that one.
Oh yeah, it's me and Steph Tolov. Well, we're on hiatus now, and honestly, who knows?
Okay.
But there's a whole backlog, and it's really funny. Things die sometimes.
Hey, yo.
And the Ignorance is Blessed one is more like I tried to rebrand it and do just funny stuff the last 5 episodes, but then I was like, oh, actually, I like interviewing people. It turns out I want to be like, what does that mean? What is that? Why do you do that?
You're naturally funny, so it's gonna be funny anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah, for real, seriously. Yeah.
And you can see me live. I go on tour, so check out my website.
When do you? Have
I'll be. I don't know when this is coming out, but
2 weeks, 1 week. I don't know yet. Maybe next week.
All right. Well, if July 19th is passed, then you missed me in San Francisco.
Well, if July 19th passed, I'll plug it on my podcast anyway. When it just
that's fine. And then I'm actually not doing that many road dates lately because I'm in town working on stuff. But I'll be in Houston in October, and there's some other stuff coming down the pipeline. And next year, I'm trying to go to smaller cities and.
Check.
Well, I still can. I'm not, in arenas.
Fuck yeah, no, but no, don't even laugh at that. Make it fucking happen. Make it happen.
Dad?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I'm blowing out your ears.
Do you come out to Freebird?
That's so funny. No, I come out to Foxy, Shazam, Teenage Demon Baby.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you so much for being on here, Fer. I appreciate it. And again, everyone, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Dead Talks. My leg hurts, and we'll see you guys next time. Later. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Dead Talks. Please do not forget to hit the subscribe button and also the notification bell. That'll give you updates as to when we post a new video, more episodes, and more content in general. We are streaming on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and all that. And also find us on Instagram at Dead Talks Podcast or www.deadtalks.net. Thank you so much.